Hello everybody. Time to start the stream. I hope everybody is doing great, and I'll just pull up the slides because I did prepare slides for today. And our topic for today is actually the hottest take I've ever done on the stream. I mean, this is like a really hot take stream. Okay, so so personal opinion, personal experience, but I've actually been quite successful, I think, at making my research more relevant for practice. So I want to discuss what I do with you, and and maybe you'll get some ideas. Okay, so the title of the stream is how to make your research more relevant for practice, but I would actually take the "your" out. Let me strike through here. I can't. I would actually take the "your" out and say, how do you make research more relevant for practice, not necessarily your research, okay? And the first thing that I think it's important that to realize is that making research relevant for practice is a job of people that do this for a living, okay? So either two things are happening, and this is a hot take, I know, which is either management research, the research that I do and that I guess most of my viewers do, is research for dummies, and so it's simple enough that people doing research can also translate it, or we're being arrogant and we are not giving people whose job is to translate research, like Maggie Kurt, who's she's brilliant. If you want to see somebody doing a good job, I mean Maggie's work is amazing. People in my generation, I'm 46, may have heard of Carl Sagan, who also did a great job in translating research on basically astronomy and astrophysics to to the common person. He had this book called Cosmos, who was not a novel research treatise. It was just research translation, but that's a hugely valuable and influential book. So there are people who do this job. This is a job, and I think it's important to realize this, because this tells us something, which is research papers are a crappy place to have your research have an impact in practice. Research papers are for other researchers. They are published in journals that other researchers do. There's no point in I think in worrying about the practical implications of your research in a journal that no practitioner reads ever. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that section in the paper is useless, but we'll get back to it now. But just realize that there are people who do this job. There are smart people who do this job, and some people do it very well, like Maggie Kurth, Carl Sagan. Other people do it wrongly, but it is a separate job. And for me, what that says to me as an academic who cares about this, because I care a lot about impact for practitioners, and I try to have impact for practitioners, is that this is a different product from research, right? These people don't write research papers. They don't write implication sections for research papers. They write newspaper articles and books. Maggie has a beautiful book on electricity, that really want to change how lay people, so non-scientists, understand research. Okay, so from my experience and observation, there are 5 products that are not research papers, okay, that can impact practice a lot, okay, and I'm going to share this with you. Now, I've done 3 of them. and I'm going to show you two great examples of other people that do the other two. Okay? So, first, let's not forget we teach. And I don't know about you, but I have teachers that have taught me things that I really use today. In my not as a researcher, but in my role, I'm director for research in my school. I'm a leader. I'm part of the senior management committee of the school. There are politics. There is strategy. I lead a team of people. There are things that I learn in class that I use. So teaching is, I think, the best way to to make sure that your research has an impact, right? You can use your research in teaching, and I don't think it's distributing your own papers. I'm not sure that's a good idea. But you can use your research in teaching. And if you think about it, like, how many people do you teach in your career? So, ESEG, we have relatively small classes. So I teach, let me see. So this semester, I'm teaching 60 people, okay? I began teaching in 1997. So that's 20 something years ago. So let's say 20, that's 1,200 people. If these people are managers, and they have a span of control of 10, that's a lot of people. So take your teaching seriously as an opportunity to improve the impact of your research, and research that is relevant, because one of our jobs as teachers is, as researchers, we are exposed, we read a lot of research in writing our papers, right? So help your students curate, right? Curating is the big thing in the internet, like curate research for your class. But you have to translate that research. Assigning papers is not enough, okay? Signing papers is lazy. These, people work. If you want your research to have an impact, you have to do the work. Okay, so I want to show you how I do that, okay? So I work like super hard. I think structuration theory, which is a super arcane theory, is super useful. Like one of those things that I think like everybody should understand. So I spend a lot of time in thinking, how do I teach structuration theory to undergraduates, okay? So what I came up with is this slide set. I'm just showing you a couple of pictures where I show these paths that people carve by walking on the streets. And I use this to show how people create their own, practices that escape structures, right? So sidewalks and roads are structures. They create their own paths, but how these paths then structure the practices of others. So that's basically structuration theory. And I have a slide set that explains this. And that took me a lot of time to think and polish, years to think, polish, in iteration with students and so on, until I sort of think I nailed it, okay? So teaching, first and foremost way of making sure that your research has practical impact. Obviously, if you teach executive education and so on, this is even better. Second, books. You can write books, but not, books that are sort of like research books, right? So think about, like, I don't know, like I'll tell you, like one of my favorite books, Gideon Kunda's Engineering Culture. Okay, it's an interesting book. Can a practitioner learn from that book? Yes, they can learn from that book, right? But, you can do a better job in writing a book for practitioners, right? So this past weekend, I launched a book where I translate a lot of high-end research for practitioners, and I really enjoyed it. It was a super fun exercise, and so it's it's an important way to translate research. So just to keep with the same example, I'm actually just like finishing a book. It's on proofreading now, called "Who is the Machine?" And basically what this book does is it translates structuration theory for everyday people. So it's a very small book. It's basically 10,000 words, so that's like a two journal articles. So it's a small book because, who reads a lot today? So it's a small book that I wrote and that explains structuration theory in a way that everyday people can understand and in the way that everyday people can see their value. Okay, and I have a little website for that book, a little page for that book on my website, where I also curate a bunch of examples of the 3 approaches to technology that are in the book. Okay, now selling books is really rough for business people and so on. But for me, a great audience for practitioner books are other faculty. So my marketing plan actually for this book and for the book that I launched this weekend is actually to sell it to basically pass it around to faculty and try to convince them to use them in their courses. Okay, that massively multiplies the impact because I'm basically using other people's teaching to increase the impact of my research, and actually it's nice because it helps me sell more. Okay, so teaching books. Okay, what's the third thing, the last thing that I do that that has a lot of impact? And this is the one. Well, I don't know how successful I've been with teaching. Some of my students like what I teach, but I don't know. But this is the one where I have the data to back up that I'm successful, okay? And so what I've done is, I'm not doing it now, but what I've done for many years was I wrote for business blogs, okay? So you can see here, this is my page. I used to be in Portugal, so I used to write in Portuguese for Portuguese business blogs, and so and these are outside. So these are 1,000 characters. That was my character. 1,000 characters or 3,000 characters. No, 1,000 characters. No, 1,000 words. That's it. 1,000 words. So 1,000 words. So I think. Anyway, or 1,000, yeah, or 3,000 characters. I think more 3,000 characters, but it's one of the two. Anyway, so I wrote these pieces. I had a lot of fun, writing this. Really was able to develop my voice as a writer. I actually presented myself as a writer. So escritor is writer in Portuguese, and that was very good for me. I felt super happy. There's a little piece in this blog that says that one of my pieces was one of the most read, and I actually used to have between 10 and 15,000 readers for each piece that I wrote monthly. So that's pretty good, right? And these pieces were, they were not research pieces, heavy. I had this sort of fun, ironic, salty, let's say, tone. But people appreciated it, and I really enjoyed it. And doing this once a month was pretty good. So writing for the press. Now there's this thing called The Conversation that exists at least in Europe and the US, where you can publish this sort of stuff. The Conversation, I think I haven't published there because I prefer to write pure opinion pieces rather than research translation. But if you want to do pure research translation, definitely The Conversation is a nice outlet. I just prefer to do opinion pieces, but that's 100% personal preference. I don't think it has more or less impact. Okay. Now there are 2 other things that I've seen people do very successfully that you can do to have a significant impact as an academic, and I'm going to give you two examples, okay, that you can do. Okay, so one, I'll start with the right side, is actually somebody who was a PhD student at Sloan when I was there, Ethan Malik, prof at Wharton, if I'm not mistaken now. And Ethan, you should definitely follow his his timeline. I'll try. Let me like just build this up to show you, okay, what Ethan does. And I'm just going to wipe my face off the screen, okay, just to show you the slide for a sec, if I can. Okay, so you should be just seeing the slide now, okay. So what what Ethan does is he does is like really like off the. They seem like off the cuff, but obviously Ethan is a really smart and thoughtful person. Tweets where he just basically does one-line translations of published research. He occasionally like puts his research, but it's mostly about other people, right? And you'll see like whoever speaks the most is likely to be made leader regardless of what they say. And people are promoted out of roles they are good at into ones they're bad at, and he shows he like has screen grabs of the papers and the key graph. So I really love to follow Ethan because you're just exposed to wide range of research. And I mean, if you think about it, like Ethan is basically building himself up as somebody that you go to learn about the practical implications of research, right? I mean, this is as simple as it goes for research translation, like a one sentence that your grandparents can understand. Whoever speaks the most is likely to be made leader regardless of what they say. As simple, right? So Ethan does a great job. Do give him a follow on Twitter if you're interested on saying somebody who does this like super well. Okay, so that's his Twitter handle, and you can do that. I mean, how many papers? I mean, we're just been discussing in the latest streams. I've been showing you, my prepping for reviews, reading a bunch, and so on. I mean, I read a bunch of stuff on leadership. So we all read bunches of things, and this is where we can really use the. Well, I'll talk about that later, the implications for practice, okay? So that's the one thing. So be somebody who is a little bit like Maggie here, but in a, let's say in sort of like a quicker, sort of less invested way, where you don't have to write an entire newspaper article. You're just like doing your job as an academic and say, this is like what we learn from this paper in a nutshell, okay? So you can do this with other people's papers. You can make other people's research and your own, obviously, relevant, right? You can translate research. So if you're worried about the relevance of management research, here it is. You can do this. It's great. Okay. Final thing is this one. I'll just put myself because I want to be there with you guys. Slide plus camera. Okay, let me shrink Ethan down. Sorry, Ethan. Shrink Ethan down and open this up. Okay, so this is super recent. So I'm sorry this is in Portuguese, but it's such a great example that I wanted to share, and this is super recent, so I thought it would be an interesting one to discuss with you guys. So a bunch of friends of mine from Portugal picked up on like publicly available statistics on on income and households and so on and so forth, and basically explained the conditions, we provided several statistics about the conditions where, in which children were learning at home, with how many, houses are, have heating, how many houses, homes are single parents, how many homes have, parents with, only high school level education, and so on and so forth, so that you see, a rich statistical depiction of the learning conditions for children that are at home because of confinement and because of the pandemic, okay? And this has been like picked up by the press. My friends have been interviewed on TV and so on and so forth. So you can apply your research skills, okay? You can apply your research skills in a really quick way, like this report. I mean, obviously it's a very good and solid work, but you know, but it's using secondary statistics and so on. So you can really apply your research skills and produce these reports that then will, you know, help inform policy and be picked up by the press and so on, okay? Now, I want to finish with by speaking about two topics super quickly. One, implications for practice section in papers. Are these useless then if practitioners don't read our journals, and they shouldn't? No, they're not, because, you know, people like Ethan that are, you know, putting, you know, summarizing the practical implications of your papers on Twitter can have an easier time doing that. People that are picking up your papers for classes, for teaching, which is one of the ways of creating impact, have an easier way of doing that, okay? So it's not that, you know, implications for practice are not there, I think, because managers are reading academic journals. They're there because other academics that teach or that are interested in sharing the practical implications of research read those bits of the paper. The second thing is, who are we translating research for, okay? And I worry sometimes that we are making some practices, like, for example, you know, concerted control, like control that people are not really aware of, and so on, that we are making those practices easier. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a good idea. So just be mindful of who are you helping when you're trying to get your research to have an impact, and what can people do with your research. So I have a piece of research about how to use shame for leadership. Is that something that we want to teach? So how did I deal with that? Okay, I'll wrap up the video with that explanation. What I deal with that is that in my book that I published last weekend, I developed a tool. One of the activities in the tool is to measure the accidental shame that you impose on your team, right? So what I'm saying is, you may unwittingly, with dashboards, be imposing shame on your team. So here's how you measure that, how you assess that, and here's how you reduce it. Okay? So what I try to do is I try to be careful in how I translate my research to convey a specific practice as something that should at least be considered on ethical grounds. Okay, so I hope this was useful. These 5 practices. I guess two key takeaways is that 1, teaching is a key way of making sure research has impact. 2nd, there are people who do this for a living, translate research, and this includes social science research, not only like hard sciences research. And so this means that this is work that needs to be taken seriously, and that requires effort that is supplemental to your effort as a researcher. Okay. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.